Machine here, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel. 20-minute video for 2 minutes worth of content. Gold.
Cloud9 are in no man's land right now, primarily because they don't really have a clear direction to go in this way and have this type of a team, keep these players and go completely the other direction. At the moment, they're stuck in the no man's land of being between two clear directions that could take them back to being a top team, a really internationally relevant team. Because you look last year in 2018, Cloud9 was pretty bad throughout the whole year. In fact, in the context of even some of the players they had and their past of Cloud9, they were very bad at times. They started to show a little bit of promise towards the end of the year, but some of that was obviously when Golden wasn't able to play. Therefore, it didn't feel legitimate because we know Golden's the in-game leader they've invested in. They didn't have him. They were having a flusher call on the side. Obviously, they had a mixed roster throughout the year. Yeah, they managed to finally sort of narrow down some of the better players at the end of the year and really lock them up. Mainly the old European players who found form again in this squad. You come into 2019. Now, I notice a lot of people's narrative includes one tournament and then the major. They talk about the E-League Invitational, where Cloud9 won the upper bracket, where they really could have won the final. They absolutely could have won that title, even though it was a tournament with FaZe Clan, including all those massive, big-time power names that you know in FaZe Clan. People talk like that's all Cloud9 had played, and therefore, they were telling Sponge and others, oh, you're sleeping on Cloud9, they're way better than you think they are. What they always forget is iBuyPower Masters exists, mate. And iBuyPower Masters, yeah, they managed to upset Fnatic in a best of one. They had a close Fnatic game, close best of one against Fnatic, and that's it. Like, overall, you had the major to iBuyPower's Masters to E-League Invitational. You take all three tournaments and you look at Cloud9 as a squad, they are nowhere near a top team. The wins they were able to get, while admirable in the context of not having a proper in-game leader and having a makeshift roster, came largely from individual play. They came from a scrimmy style of play, which allowed all these completely different styles of player, Flusher, Automatic, Kiyashima, to all coexist and be able to play at a high level, because generally those three players were the ones who got it done for Cloud9. So they were a very well-rounded squad. They didn't really have a lot that was replicable, that would work long-term. They were just making do with what they had under tough circumstances, and quite frankly, they did a very admirable job, as I mentioned. They almost made the second phase of the major. They were a team that actually was able to almost win the E-League Invitational. They weren't ever going to do deep work at iBuyPower Masters. That wasn't realistic. They were going to get smashed whoever they played if they'd have made the playoffs there. So you look at the roster of who they have, and it kind of makes sense as to why this roster wasn't that great overall. Like, first of all, there is no clear-cut in-game leader. Flusher's not going to do that job for a long time. Flusher obviously isn't even in the team anymore now. But anyway, it wasn't a long-term project that he'd be the in-game leader. You've spent money for Golden. You've brought him in. You've waited now months and months. You let the results tank. That is a level of investment and commitment which says we are going to make Golden work. Well, Golden wasn't in the lineup that looked decent for Cloud9. Kiyashima is the player I'll start with. Obviously, he wasn't a bad player in Envious anyway. They were just a waste of time as a team. And then he was sitting out because none of the French teams particularly wanted him for past reasons. He's actually an overqualified player to probably be on this version of Cloud9, the one that was bad last year, because actually Kiyashima didn't really show a bad level of play. Kiyashima wasn't even bad at the end of phase overall, except for having that bad major, and then I've told you some of the behind the scenes stuff of not wanting to practice much, and that's why he got kicked and people didn't want to play with him anymore. In terms of as a player, he hasn't dropped off, and you've seen in this particular team, I think overall, I would say he's been the best player for Cloud9. He's looked like he's absolutely got his individual game back, his fragging's at a pretty good level, he always had good aim, so I'd say Kiyashima, very solid piece. Flusher was good, and in fact, in the context of playing with, I think it was his mother passed away, he was very good actually at the major in that context. Overall, I think this year he's really turned his game around. He had fallen off massively in Fnatic last year. Made perfect sense to me that they cut him. He refound some of his form in this particular scrimmy Cloud9, but obviously he's not going to be there anymore, so okay, have to put that one aside. So after Kiyashima, the next clear best player in the team is Automatic. Now, he's been good. In terms of the context that he wasn't traditionally an AWP and he's opted a lot, he's been very good. But in terms of as an overall player against all players in the world, I feel like the AWP's actually a waste of potential in his hands. He's such a good player in terms of intelligence in the game. He's good in clutches. He's good setting himself up with a rifle. I think just as a rifle player, he's so strong and his fragging numbers are going to be good. I'd prefer to have him personally on a rifle rather than an AWP. So I still feel like there's room for an AWPer in this team. Rush, I've got to say, I know obviously he's supposed to be a role player, but I quite frankly, after seeing him last year and then even in this particular lineup, I'd probably cut him if I was being honest. Like, I don't think he's really fits this team. For whatever reason, he hasn't rediscovered his game. He's lost in terms of individual identity, in terms of role in the team. I just would have to go ahead and say if I had to cut anyone, I'd consider removing him. Celsius, I think, just wasn't good enough. I mean, he never should have been in this position anyway. He was only there because almost no one else could play for Cloud9. He did okay in a couple of games or a couple of rounds, couple of halves, but he wasn't particularly like a quality player, I didn't think. He didn't really seem to fit his job. He did a good job of being stable and not dying as much as he could have done, not making stupid misplays. But he wasn't going to be a quality player for my money in this team. So you look now, what direction did they go in? Because they've got Golden coming back as in-game leader. So, right, we've got to make Golden work. We've got to find players that can work with Golden. Flusher's left, entirely understandable. Wasn't really that great a setup for him anyway. He's got the whole family scenario where he wants to go back. I get that. It's a shame, because obviously he was looking good in this lineup. Celsius gets cut. So already we're in a position where we need 2 new players. And then... let me think. We need 2 new players, and then we need to figure out the in-game leader situation. And that's the problem for me. That's why I have this team in no man's land. Because if what they said was, right, Flusher's leaving, we're cutting Celsius, and you know what, Golden, whatever the problems were, we decided it's not right to go with him, we're going to let him go. Now I would say, you're very, very diminished. You only have 2 players left, but you could build an extremely strong team out of nowhere here. Like, if you have just Kiyoshima or Mike, those are really solid building blocks. But it's the in-game leader aspect for me. Because will a mixed team of Mouse Sports, an Imperial, a Valiant style mixture of talents, will this kind of FaZe Clan, will that kind of team work under Golden? I'm skeptical. I haven't seen it so far. When they looked at the best, it was when Golden wasn't on the lineup. That's my problem. If we had the in-game leader spot available, so if I could go out and get Carrigan and pay him mega bucks and say, we'll build this squad around you. It's you, it's Kiyoshima, it's Automatic. Help me pick out the other 2 players. Let's get going. Now I'd say you could be a team that has real promise. Obviously, that would actually look kind of like the FaZe lineup that he walked into in the first place, where it was quality players, but they had no identity, they had no structure, they had poor in-game leading. Some of them weren't in the right roles. He set all those things in place. Immediately, they became one of the top teams in the world. If this was a team where I could bring Christian to be an all-pro in-game leader, hey, I've seen it in Mouse Sports. It could be a quality team again. I feel like he could fit a lot of pieces around him. He's a guy who doesn't have a big ego. I would even say if you could bring in Chris J just as a player, have him as your all-pro on this team. I like that look. I think on a team like this, he absolutely could do it. Free up Automatic. If you've got Kiyoshima, Chris J, Kiyoshima, Chris J, Automatic, and Carrigan, that's already a nice 4-man lineup right there. Then obviously there was the rumour that potentially Sonny is someone they're looking at. Now that makes me wonder if the Chris J move is even a possibility, right? Because those are 2 players who played together, seem to like each other. Sonny obviously is a very individually skilled player. Yes, he had a whack kind of third to last year, end of last year, but he still proved himself to be a very skilled player. I also feel like, I mean, there's a lot of players here, I will say, aren't like pure entries. They're sort of the guy who likes to go in second or third. So I'm kind of a bit concerned about that in terms of role balance. But he's such a skilled player. I think we could make a very solid team around him. We've got a nice trio of them if we get him there. The big question is this. Do you go EU? Do you go NA? And what do you do with in-game leader? So for the in-game leader aspect, I'm just very skeptical that's going to work as is. Let's see what happens if you can add a Sonny level talent, a Chris J level. If you go EU, the upside is you've got tons of players, a bazillion players you can try out. You can bring in old players. You can bring someone the second they get cut from another team. That's great for talent. The problem is you get a harder qualifier for the major and for other tournaments. That's going to be a problem, right? You're not going to truly be an NA squad. So I do think you risk losing some fan support. Now, personally, I don't care about that. I think you should try and win and get your fans that way. And I think you'd still have a lot of fans. There's a lot of Cloud9 fans generally. I think a lot of them would accept having European players. The problem is you wouldn't truly be the NA team anymore, would you? Like a team that would clearly take that mantle right now, and they're a better team. So that was what would be hard. I do think people would still support like Rush or Automatic, whoever the NA players are. I think you would still get some support, but you would be giving up some of the market value there in terms of like just the angle of who do fans like the most. If you go the NA approach, obviously there's a lot less good players, and more importantly, most of the good players are all locked up. So you're going to have to probably gamble on a JDM or someone of this, or get Wardell. These are the sorts of players you're going to have to go for. It's not going to be as clear cut as getting someone like a Sonny. So when you look at the players that Team Liquid and NRG are hoarding right now, they've got the star players that other teams would want. So in my opinion, you can go this route, you maintain your fan base, but You must prime yourself to make a big run at any good talent that becomes available. You already missed Tarek. That was a player potentially you could have gone for. Now, I get it. The way him and Stewie left, I'd say fuck the guy as well. And I like him as a person. But I get on a business level where I would be like, I'm not bringing this fucking guy back. I get that. But you have to be ready for the next one of those talents. Whoever it might be, whether it's Naf or Twists or OllieJ or Breezy or Ethan, any of these players that become available, you've got to be ready to get them and have a favourable scenario for them and bring them right over. That's the kind of move you're going to have to do if you're going to go NA approach. Otherwise, I think the problem at the moment is it's just too much of nothing. That's why it's no man's land. It's not like going EU and getting all these talents and then getting the right in-game leader. It's not going NA and starting to build up a nice core, figure out which Europeans we want to fit in there as the imports and go back towards this style. It's neither. At the moment, you're stuck in the middle and you can't repeat what you did in the recent tournaments as it was. So it's a big, big blow to lose Flusher, at least based on what he showed us now. I don't think they're going to get Carrigan, quite frankly. I don't know about Chris J. I'm open to that one. I'd like it personally. I think the Sonny angle's a very, very tempting one if they can manage to get a player of that level. I personally would probably go more towards the EU route. I think there are pieces here. It's just now we need to start adding like an identity to the team. These are good players, but they're just good players in isolation. Let's get like a core identity that makes sense. I mean, Fogley's obviously just been cut from NRG. There's somebody you've got to consider, right, as a role player. If we're going to get a Sonny, add in Sonny, Fogley, and then is Golden going to work? Can we replace Golden? There's a lot of ways you could go. In fact, there's almost every direction because you've got the pieces and the org and the money. It's the question is, what do you put your money on? What are you willing to gamble on and invest in? And what's the long-term approach? This video was supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, James Harding, NateDOhDoubleG, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, Travis Greb, Tristan Jones, Daniel Olivar, Jiangheng Lu, and special thanks, as always, goes out to Jerky's Minion, one of my OGs. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask me a question. I have a monthly AMA. Perhaps you want teasers for who the next guests are on my upcoming talk shows. Maybe you want to be part of my monthly discussion where my top patrons talk to me. Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the description box link for Patreon.